皆さんこんにちは、ピボットののちまです。今日のテーマは AI× 英語学習の現在地、そしてシリコンバレーの最前線です。今世界ではおよそ15億人が英語を学んでいると言われているわけなんですが、その学び方を根本から変えようとしているのが AI 英会話ですよね。で、私も英語学習者としては、この AI 会話、本当に進化してるのかなとか、本当に喋れるようになるのかなと、懐疑的なところもあるんですが、そんな中、今日はアメリカのユニコーン企業であり、OpenAI から出資も受ける Speak という会社、アプリサービスに注目します。特にアジアで存在感を高めていて、韓国では10人に1人が使っているとも言われています。日本にも本格上陸し、急成長を続けているわけなんですが、今日はこの Speak を率いる CEO コナーさん、そして CTO のアンドリューさんにご登場いただきます。ビジネス、AI 英語学習、そしてシリコンバレーの最前線に一緒に皆さんと掘り下げていきたいと思います。Welcome, Connor and Andrew. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
So you came all the way from Silicon Valley today, right?
Yeah. Yep.
How's it like it? I mean, Japan.
It's amazing. We actually have the entire company here for the entire week, and we're doing a kind of a company all-hands trip in Japan because it's a really important market for us.
Thank you so much for coming to us, here, PIVOT. And I will introduce you two to viewers first. Connor built his first education startup at just 17 and sold it, right?
Yeah.
And now you're the one of the fastest growing language learning apps in the world CEO.
Yep.
Okay. And Andrew, you finished college at 16.
That's right.
Yes, and went deep into AI and now runs the tech behind the Speak, right?
Yes.
Okay, and instead of me saying more, could you both give us quick intro of your backgrounds?
Sure. Well, I've always just been someone that's really liked to build things. When I was like a kid, I used I got a hand-me-down computer from my parents, and always was really interested in technology and making things. And as you said, I got into mobile apps when the iPhone came out pretty young. And I think that's been a very kind of defining thing for my entire life. And moved out to Silicon Valley basically as soon as I could, and have basically just been working on technology ever since. We spent a lot of time doing AI research together before we started Speak, and that's kind of how we got started. We met at we both met as part of a program called the Thiel Fellowship, which is a program by Peter Thiel. He was one of the co-founders of PayPal, and now he started Founders Fund. But he had this program called 20 Under 20, where they would pay 20 people under the age of 20 every year $100,000 to drop out of college.
Wow.
So we both did that, and that's how we met.
That's incredible. Anything to add on?
Well, my brief story is that I've actually had a very accelerated educational journey. Growing up, like you mentioned, I went to college when I was 12, and then I started grad school when I was 16. So I've always been interested in technology, computers, and generally building tools to help people learn more effectively and faster. And that's kind of what we're doing with Speak, which is, very aligned.
But you were kind of like the professional of AI, right? But how did you come to this market, language learning market?
Yeah, so we actually, back in about 2015 or so, were thinking about future of technology and where we wanted to take our careers. And this was right around the time when AI and deep learning models were starting to come back into style. And they seemed like, okay, they're starting to be effective on many tough problems like speech recognition. And it was really more from the sort of technology point of view, I think, that we came up with the first idea for Speak, where we predicted that in 5 or 10 years, speech models like speech recognition models, language models would go like this in terms of capabilities and become superhuman. And then that would essentially unlock a variety of products that were not possible to build before, but including a superhuman level AI tutor for languages and for eventually everything. So I think we got very lucky with the super well-fitting use case of a lot of these AI models, and we thought about it more from the technology point of view.
I could talk all day about your background as well, but let's turn to Speak itself. Could you tell us what their service is and what that service give us?
Yeah, so Speak, in a nutshell, what we're trying to do is build the world's best tutor, but it's an AI-powered tutor so it's accessible to anyone who wants it. I think, traditionally tutoring has been a service that's only reserved for people who can afford it and have the willingness to spend a lot of time with another person. It's very inconvenient, and frankly, it's kind of uncomfortable for some people to have to practice with another human. And so the main idea is we want to build a service that makes that really accessible. So you can almost think of digital language learning as a series of waves. The first wave was like the old school CD-ROMs or early software. It wasn't really very engaging to use, but it was something that was self-serve. The second wave was basically really gamified experiences on mobile phones that made it really accessible. But it wasn't really an effective language learning solution. It was more of like a vocabulary. And so people weren't actually becoming fluent from these services. I think what we now have the opportunity to do with AI and what we're focused on with Speak is offering something that actually allows people to learn by doing. So actually having interactive back and forth conversations with an AI where you're learning along the way, which is how people that actually learn languages successfully historically have always done it. And that's in a nutshell what we offer for Speak. It's all centered around something that will actually get you comfortable talking out loud.
I see. I'm actually a user of Speak, so I'll talk about that later. But I have to ask you about Duolingo because I think it's the biggest player here. And like you said, some people say that there's kind of like a shift from a gamified thing. But what would you say to that? I mean, do you have any comments on that?
I think that what we think is basically, in order to become good at speaking, you have to speak out loud a lot. It's kind of like how if you wanted to learn how to swim, you couldn't do that by playing a mobile game, right? By reading a book. You have to jump the pool and actually swim. So we think of Speak as really a new category of product that is only possible relatively recently because of new AI models. And it's basically a superhuman AI tutor for languages. We think a lot of the platform and technology that we're building is also good for other types of knowledge beyond languages, but there's a huge opportunity here that we're focused on in the short term for language learning.
I mean, I would basically agree that the thing we often come back to is this idea of learning by doing. And I think the swimming analogy or playing the piano is another really good analogy here, where you actually have to go press the keys to be able to do it. And I think the old generation of apps that aren't AI native are really great at making learning accessible to more people. Like way more people are interested in learning languages as a result of apps like Duolingo. And I think that that will continue to be an incredibly valuable thing for the world. But we're really focused on people who have like a really genuine interest in learning the language to be able to communicate out loud in the real world and do like functional things. And I think that kind of AI native approach is a fundamentally different way. Like a thing that we think about is rather than just focus on the dopamine and like the hits and the psychology that is required for gamification, what if we can make learning really enjoyable by actually facilitating almost like a relationship? Like if you think about the way that people learn languages, oftentimes a common story is it's because you either fall in love with someone or you make friends with people or you move to the country and form these relationships. Learning a language is ultimately about connecting with other humans. It's a relationship thing. And so we think about that. How can we maybe build an even healthier dynamic where it actually feels more of like you're practicing that connection, and that in and of itself is like a really enjoyable thing to do. So I think that's like an example of how we think about a more AI native approach versus maybe the last decade where everything was really focused on like, retaining users through dopamine hits.
I see. So this market is kind of huge, but do you see this market is kind of competitive because a lot of AI speaking English learning apps are like coming up so fast? So
we think that, I mean, it's clearly an incredible use case for AI, and it's clearly going to change the way that people learn. AI just more broadly will absolutely transform how people learn things. But we think it's a really hard problem. We've spent now like 8 years building our technology at this point, and there's a ton that goes into it if you actually want to build something that's engaging and drives outcomes. So we think there's a huge opportunity to like really specialize and build like a deep technology. And so for example, even the fact that our speech recognition is really fast and really accurate is one example of a really deep technical investment we've made. that a lot of that I think is going to be a real moat for us long term. And that's ultimately the thing that we're really focused on, is how do you build a specialized solution that really works for the extended long term.
I see. So there's this kind of technical thing that he mentioned. I'd like to ask Andrew about the breakthrough that you made this recent years. What kind of breakthroughs that you achieved technically?
I think there's a variety of them. The way that we think about it is basically, in order to pull off this superhuman AI tutor, there's a bunch of capabilities that you need to be really good at as a company, to make Speak successful. And one of them that Connor mentioned is really fast, really good speech recognition for non-native speech. That's only one thing though. We also have to be really good at understanding how proficient you are as a user and try to quantify your fluency score. And how do we go from your current state to building the most effective path of lessons and reviews and drills to get you to your learning goal, which might, it might be very general fluency. It might be something specific, like you're going to New York in 3 months and you want to get around, or some specific, business purpose. That's another thing. And we're trying to build a bunch of technology platforms around real-time audio so that the Speak app feels very sort of low latency, immersive, like you're talking with a real human, and it sort of responds back at you very quickly. There's a number of things like that. And we basically think that all of them come together holistically to form our product vision that we've been kind of single-mindedly, chasing after for the past 7-8 years.
I've tried the app myself, like I said, and I love that there's no delay and very accurate recognition, like you said, and there's instant feedback right there. So is this kind of feature differentiate from other apps that you think?
That's certainly a big piece of it. We have a huge focus on performance. We think a lot about how do we make things feel as snappy as possible so that the app feels as intelligent as possible. There's a lot, there's thousands of these little UX and design and technology decisions that I think we've just been at this problem for so long, honestly, that we feel like we deeply understand the market, what feels very valuable for users. So I'm very glad to feel that way, and it'll keep getting better.
Okay, thank you so much. And let's go dive in. So why did you decide to start in Korea first? Is there any explanation for that?
Yeah, well, I think the unique thing maybe about our business is we, despite being both people that live in San Francisco, we decided to launch in South Korea, a place that neither of us had ever been before we started Speak. It was a bit of an unusual decision at the time. Everyone in California thought we were very crazy for doing this. Yeah. And the reason, though, is that we knew we needed to focus in on one market and build something for a more specific set of people and just solve their problem really, really well. And we quite literally went to many different countries. We launched free versions of our app in the early days, and we got a ton of user feedback, and we studied each of the markets. And ultimately, we saw South Korea as a market where there was a huge level of both obsession with learning, but also an incredibly competitive market where there was a ton of noise. And the thinking was, if we can make this work in South Korea, a market where most Western technology companies have actually failed, there's a lot of them never are able to expand into South Korea. So if we're able to escape the noise and actually build a product that's differentiated in that market, it's kind of like coming up in a world where that's the most difficult. And then when you expand to other places, it should work there as well. And that was ultimately the strategy, and I think it ended up paying off.
What brought you there? I mean, what brought you to the success?
I think it was a deep, as Andrew was just saying, a really deep focus on the long-term vision for where we thought this was going to go. From the very first time we did Y Combinator, and from that very first pitch on demo day at YC, we've been saying the exact same thing, that over the next decade, it would be possible to build a superhuman AI tutor. And so every decision we were making in Korea was not for the short-term growth, but it was for building a truly differentiated product. I think the actual specifics of that were mostly breakthroughs in technology. So building really, really good speech recognition was one of the early breakthroughs in South Korea, and being able to build a really good product experience around that. But then the second really big breakthrough was basically inventing what we call the Speak method, which is our proprietary way of actually teaching people how to basically scaffold actual fluency quickly. And be able to have that really magical experience of just saying language out loud and not translating in your head, but just talking about it. That's real fluency. And that's the actual proprietary methodology there in combination with the technology is like really the secret sauce, I would say, of what made Speak work in Korea.
So you mentioned that a lot of people thought you guys are crazy for going to Korea first, right? But where else would they go? I mean, is there any other big markets out there?
Where else do we consider?
Yes.
Early days? Well, Japan was one of them.
Thanks.
I think probably Japan and Korea were two of the markets that we looked at the most closely. And there's another world where we would have launched in Japan first. I think the reason we did Korea, one of the reasons was we had my college roommate who was from Korea, who we recruited as one of our first employees. And we didn't know the equivalent Japanese person. So that might honestly be the reason we ended up in Korea versus Japan.
Right. Is there any like key differences between Japan and Korea?
Absolutely. I think like what have been the biggest learnings? I feel like one really interesting thing is we're now live in a bunch of markets, not just Korea and Japan. We're live in many markets around the world. Japanese users, for whatever reason, are about 60% more likely to form a long-term habit than any other country. And I think that's kind of remarkable.
I didn't know.
So that's a really interesting thing. We also see that there's an immense amount of interest in the Japanese market for business English in particular, much more pronounced than even a market like South Korea. And maybe the second category is tourism, not for Japanese people to go travel, but actually because tourism is becoming such a big industry in Japan, we sense that that is a form of that professional English people are interested in. And a solution like Speak is a really good solution for that because you can practice the actual conversational English that you need for the job that you're doing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add on between the differences between Japan and Korea?
I think like one obvious thing is that Japan is much bigger than Korea as well. And I think, perhaps due to this, something about the average Japanese user that is much more likely to form a habit. We've just been growing extremely quickly here, and it's the most exciting time in company history, I think.
Yeah, the Japanese market is quickly becoming one of the most important markets by far for us. We've had like quite literally exponential growth over the last two or so years. So it's been really exciting.
Could you say that in data? I mean, like numbers?
Yeah, I mean, like over the last year alone, our total business size is more than 3x'd in this market off of a significant base already. We've seen, even within that year where we've been growing at quite a scale, the amount of time that people are spending, Japanese learners are spending in the app has gone up by about 20% on average, which is quite remarkable when you have such user growth, that the actual quality of usage is also going up. So that's been quite cool as well. And we're also seeing a ton of inbound interest on our enterprise offering because we offer Speak for businesses to train their workforces as well, to evaluate and train their workforces. And that also has been something that we've been able to get a lot of really great logos like Sapporo and banks and big companies. Yeah.
Cool. But the question is, can we become fluent?
Yeah.
When we use Speak.
Yeah.
How do you say to that?
Well, I think that there's one of the fundamental problems with talking about fluency is most measures of fluency are imperfect. Like almost every single test that exists out there is a gameable test. Right. And so one thing that's coming soon is we think it's possible with AI to build like the first true measure of fluency that is not gameable.
Interesting.
And there will be more on that hopefully soon. But we see like we do track this very closely, and we've qualitatively we've seen many people that can go from not able to speak English whatsoever to being able to have quite fluent conversations, B1, B2, even C1 levels. We see that we have a set of courses at every single kind of level of CFR, which is the common way of talking about languages. And we see that, for example, someone that wants to get to an A1 level of fluency, which is like, the basic level of fluency. But survival language in, another country, for example, that is possible within just a matter of finishing a few of these courses, which, can take, depending on how much you're using the app, a matter of months or even weeks if you're working really intensely. Obviously, for the longer levels, it takes a little bit longer, but we've seen people go through the entire curriculum and get to that like B2 advanced level. It really just depends on the willingness to actually use the app. We're not selling something magical here. It does require hard work still, but it is possible with Speak, I think. And I don't think it was possible with digital solutions before that.
I believe so too. But I'd like to ask you more about the test that you're going to give. Could you give us a little bit more about that?
I think that intuition, we don't have we're not fully talking about it publicly yet, but the intuition here is that there is a opportunity to use AI to be able to engage someone in a conversation and easily control the difficulty of that conversation and move it up and down and systematically probe in different areas of the language. So we're already building this thing that Andrew mentioned earlier, which is an internal method. One of our learning platform technologies is something we call our Speak score system, where we essentially build a model of the entire language you're trying to learn. And we track exactly what you know and don't know. This is only possible with today's AI. And so that exact technology can also be used to be able to understand someone's fluency in the format of a test. And so unlike normal tests where there's maybe a standard set of questions or vocabulary words that they're looking for, this can be a truly systematic, infinite test. And that's something that wasn't possible 2 years ago, but is a great example of one of the many ways in which AI is surpassing humans, right? No human evaluator can keep a perfect model in their head of everything you know and don't know.
I see.
But an AI can.
Was it technologically difficult for building up that kind of program?
I think we had to really think a lot about how do we combine the raw power of a lot of these new large language models, like these big new models from companies like OpenAI, with the sort of domain-specific product development and thinking and UX. And this is a little bit of a holy grail for us, right? Because I think one of the most important pieces of technology that we could develop is the ability to really quantify how good you are at English or whatever language that you're learning. As an aside, I think that this is particularly interesting for the B2B enterprise side, because a lot of employers that are purchasing Speak for specific functional skills for their employees really care a lot about ROI, right? So they really care about us being able to prove that this employee is actually getting better at this functional skill. So that's going to be almost even more exciting for enterprise than for consumer.
Yeah, I'd like to ask about that more. I mean, how do learners actually see their improvements, in the app or services?
Yeah, this is very related to what we're talking about around this sense of score. I think the first way is just literally progressing through the material, and we have specific focuses around the ability to do different things. So, for example, every single unit, you're focused on the ability to do something like go into a restaurant and have a conversation, or walk around on the street and ask for directions, or having a debate with somebody. And each of these things we call a can-do statement. The goal of the unit is to basically be able to do that at the end. So how do we actually tell if you can do it? Well, we literally test you. We simulate whatever that environment is. And the whole point of the unit is to teach you all of the language you need. And at that point, you should have it all fluent. It should be something you don't translate, but you can just say. And then we quite literally just put you in that scenario and see if you can have the conversation. And then this is a way that we make it really, really simple for our users to see their progress. Because at the end of the unit, you can either do this thing or you can't. And that's kind of the underpinning. And then zooming out from there, the big thing that we want to do is actually giving people a lot more detail on exactly how that works and what the numerical scores are and all of that stuff. And there's a lot more there that we haven't launched yet. A lot of stuff that's been internal works for quite a while now. And some of it will be launching later this year, but we're really excited. I think in general, maybe you can tell, but it feels like we're still very early days in terms of what's possible with the technology. And we're like, it feels like we're riding this curve where every single quarter things change like immensely.
But the question is, we have very thick accents here, maybe. How can they study us? I mean, how can they perfectly recognize us?
Well, I think that's a technical problem that we've been at for many years, right?
That's how we started the company, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So in this AI research, phase, we actually trained a speech recognition model that was really good at understanding accents. It was state of the art at the time, and that is kind of what gave us the core idea for Speak.
So this was back in 2015, 2016.
Wow.
And we saw that this model that we trained off of YouTube data over a weekend was state of the art. And that was one of the key points of conviction for us for building Speak in the first place, is we saw the power of getting the data and the model together and how much better you can improve things.
Your prediction was right.
And so to this day, we're still that's one of the core things that Speak is really good at, is understanding, specifically being really good at understanding when you're speaking with that learner accent, and then being able to, over time, train you how to sound more and more native. And as an example, we don't just recognize the words you're saying, we also recognize all of the phonemes, which are all the individual sounds of the word. And so if you're saying the wrong sound, for example, in Japanese, you don't have the L and the R sound. That's a classic hard sound for a Japanese speaker learning English. And this is a specific thing that we can understand when you're doing it, and then slowly train you how to not do that.
And I think this is one example. The non-native really good speech recognition is one example of how we are entirely focused on developing a very specialized product around language learning and eventually learning, which is our general philosophy for how to build product, which is that it needs to be the best purpose-built tool for language learning. And we think that is partially long-term how we'll differentiate against more sort of general horizontal personal assistants.
If we step back, I'd like to ask you more about AI industry itself. With all the investment flowing, what role do you see for consumers app like Speak right now?
Well, it's kind of interesting because we see the ChatGPT moment happened, a little over 2 years ago or whatever at this point, and the world has completely changed as a result. Everyone is focused on AI now. There's been a tremendous amount of money, but there aren't actually that many breakout hits yet of AI native companies on the consumer side. Obviously, we have ChatGPT, which is incredibly large, and there are some other players in certain markets. But it still feels like it's fairly early days. There's definitely a lot of capital, but we're not seeing a ton of new major consumer companies. I actually think Speak is one of the exceptions and we've been at it for a long time before the ChatGPT moments, which I think is part of the reason why we've got the curve we have. But generally, I think that the landscape is going to shift in a dramatic way. I think if you just think about it from first principles, AI is probably the most important technology humans have ever invented or created, more important than the Industrial Revolution or the internet or even the computer in terms of the way it will change the world. Everything else has just been building better tools, but now we're building a better version of the thing that's using the tool, which is the actual humans. This is the first time that's happening. And I think that's a very big paradigm shift that we don't even know how to reason about what the world will look like in 5 or 10 years from now. I mean, this is a famous thing with even sci-fi authors never know how to write about AI because everything just breaks down when you start thinking about where it will go. So obviously we can't predict the future either, but I think it will clearly have huge economic impact. And I think there's going to be colossal winners over the next 5-10 years.
But I'm sure you two predicted right, back in 2017 or 14, right? But I'd like to ask you about the APIs that you make with OpenAI. Because I know you've been working really deeply with OpenAI, but do you think that OpenAI's real conversation mode, was that the right word? I don't know.
Yeah, they had advanced voice mode, and now I think they're calling it GPT voice mode.
And people would ask you is it enough for us or not?
In the context of like learning and languages? Yeah. Well, this is kind of what Andrew was saying earlier, but we think that there's a huge value in building a specialized solution. So the advanced voice mode feature is super cool. And what we see is that it makes a lot of people realize that they can use AI to learn a language. So that's like the Speak specific context. But what also happens is they realize that because it's such a horizontal solution, it's not actually very good at, for example, planning out the curriculum that you should learn today, tomorrow, the day after, and the day after that. It's not very good at understanding what mistakes you're making and actually giving you actionable feedback and not giving you too much feedback and not giving you the wrong feedback, but actually giving you the right amount of feedback. It's not good at, changing into different characters to keep you engaged, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things there. For example, we're building we have a version of that we're releasing that can actually reference like the actual pedagogical learning plan for that lesson and talk about it and teach you things and talk until it needs you to interact and then assess you. And it's basically like our version of this. And so generally we think of it as like, it's the very general purpose tool. But then once you realize, I can use AI to learn a language, and you actually want to put in consistent time every day to do that, we see that people will generally like look for a more specialized solution like Speak. And we think there's a really big opportunity there to differentiate.
Yeah, that's basically our view. We think that product specialization is really the key here, and that there is, for language fluency, just a really broad set of skills for a person to become fluent that takes many years to learn. And there's a lot of specific software that we need to build. It's not going to be something that can be handled always by a general purpose, personal assistant. So we are going sort of very deep and vertical, if you will, in the language learning domain. And there's just so many specific UI decisions and, decisions about what to show on the screen while the tutor is saying something in the audio domain that completely change how effective the learning experience is. And we just always want to be the most specialized, best solution so that even if a user gets busy and life gets in the way and then they churn and maybe come back 6 or 12 months later, Speak is still the best. And then they come back to Speak. We're seeing this pattern already in a lot of our most mature markets.
Interesting. So one more question. ChatGPT updated to Model 5.
Yeah, GPT-5.
Yeah, I know. And then is there any change for our experience, like as the user of Speak?
Yeah, so we use many models under the hood. And in general, as a company, we're very focused on solving a user problem and achieving this AI language tutor product vision. And we basically view which model do you use as a little bit of a tool to achieve a product experience, if that makes sense. So it's very feature dependent. In general, we have upgraded a lot of our features to use GPT-5. There's several versions of it. There's like the, big one that is also the slowest and most expensive. And then there's a cheap, smaller model that you can use for things that need to be really fast. And one of the things that GPT-5 is really good at is reasoning, right? So thinking and producing a higher quality answer. And that was actually a really big breakthrough, we think, for a lot of the internal research that we're doing around deeply understanding your proficiency and things like writing a really specialized, personalized lesson and lesson plan over many weeks and many units, given exactly who you are as a user and like what your goals are. So we're super excited that every time the frontier of intelligence gets pushed out, it feels like it kind of unlocks a lot of things that we had been, dreaming of. And it just wasn't possible before, but now it's possible.
Do you have anything to add about that?
Maybe like the analogy here would be that if, 6 months ago, when agentic reasoning wasn't as good, we were able to have an experience where you're having a back and forth conversation with one tutor. And now with like everything that has been making progress on the agentic intelligence side, it's almost like you have like a team of tutors that are all working behind the scenes when you're not using the app, thinking about you, evaluating, planning the curriculum, changing things. And then the next time you come back into the app, it's improved in like 15 different ways that you don't even really realize. That's the sort of way that I think the current way that we've been making progress with like, GPT-4 versus 5 shows up in terms of the product experience. But it's just one of several different ways in which the product experience changes. And we also have a lot of like internal workflows and models that are kind of separate from the public foundation models that also are really important parts of like the product experience.
So we've been talking about OpenAI and your products, but zooming out again, is there any trends in Silicon Valley about AI or startups or that you can share us?
Well, I feel like obviously one trend is the like level of fervor around AI in general. It feels like every single company is now an AI company. Every investor only wants to invest in AI, which, I don't know how good that is, but that's certainly a trend. I do think within AI, I think voice modality, voice, and like just interfacing with your computer with advanced voice mode on ChatGPT is a good example. I think generally I think that's something that a lot of companies are continuing to more focus on going forward. So I think that might be a trend. I don't know. Do you have any?
I would say for startups in general, there's just been this, it's hard to describe without sitting in San Francisco, but it's just like such a level of intensity and hunger and speed around execution. And everyone is working really hard. Everyone feels super excited because similar to Speak, a lot of the product ideas that people have been dreaming of are now like 95% possible. So everyone wants to go really like chase their dream. And like Connor mentioned earlier, it seems like there are way fewer breakout consumer applications than we expected. It's mostly been on the business and enterprise side. So I guess that's another broad trend. But I'm excited to see like what other consumer apps will they break out over the next few years.
So there are a lot of startups popping up right now. But do you think there's any differences between those companies that stays and those companies that are like, fade away?
I feel like for startups, my impression is a lot of startups die because they just give up. It's not because they ran out of money, right? It's just that it's not going well and it lasted a certain amount of time and eventually they, maybe felt like they were wasting their time or whatever. And the companies that endure are simply the ones that are willing to stick it out until it starts to work and continue to iterate. I feel like that's like one of the biggest things I've seen over like the last decade in Silicon Valley is that the companies that win tend to take longer than you expect, but they just have to see through it. Do you have any?
I know something I'm seeing as well, and that I think a lot about is it is with all this craze around AI and with a lot of users willing to kind of tire kick and try new shiny AI products, it's almost harder now for founders to know if they have true product market fit. And a lot of times you can get a bunch of hype and usage and even some revenue for the first week, and then it all goes away. And I think we've been able to really avoid that by staying very focused on product vision, solving the user problem, treating AI models as a tool, an end to a means. And we've just been at it for long enough that I think we have a lot of product discipline, if you will. And we feel like we're solving a big problem with very strong PMF.
The reason why I ask you about this is Japan, we don't really have any unicorn company right now. So like, how can we learn from you two? That's what I thought, but
I feel like the biggest thing that comes to mind for me for Silicon Valley is it's an ecosystem. It's about the whole thing. It's like the fact that there's so many investors that are willing to invest and take huge risks. And there's a lot of money involved and
people thinking long term.
And there's a lot of there's a culture of long term. There's a culture of helping each other out and just not being like zero sum about things. It's kind of an exceptional thing that kind of magically happened that I feel like didn't necessarily, it was an accident almost in history. And to me, I feel like that's a thing that's like really hard to recreate, but it has been. And like every country has like some form of the ecosystem. But it certainly does feel like a pretty distinct and magical thing.
Right, ecosystem. I believe that that's something that we don't have right now. Thank you so much. And there's also the so-called wrapper debate.
Wrapper debate, yeah.
Yes. How do you like differentiate from those like wrapper companies?
It's actually really interesting how much it's changed over the last year.
Yeah.
I would say a year ago, people really were thinking like, oh, wrappers, everything's just a wrapper. The real value is in the models. The models are getting better and better. And I think even over the last 6 months to a year, what we've seen is that there's, DeepSeek has come out and all of the models have basically gotten as good. And the model, it turns out, was actually a little bit more of a commodity. And even if you look at OpenAI, the real way that they're making money is ChatGPT, which is a wrapper around GPT. It's a consumer app, right? And I think that's actually, the funny thing is I actually feel like now in Silicon Valley, the thinking is almost completely gone 180. And the whole idea is application layer is where the value will be. And it's not about the models because there's open source models that are just as good. And it's all about all the classic things like how do you get distribution? How do you get product market fit? How do you build application specific features to really like solve a use case and create real value for the world? And I think like that has at least been the thing that we've seen.
What about you?
Yeah. I mean, it turns out the fundamentals still matter. And maybe they just actually matter more than they ever did before.
Wow.
And having a good product matters. Everyone has access to an amazing open source AI model, right? So really, maybe the differentiator is just in the quality of your product execution. How good is the user experience? How much do you focus on things like being low latency and snappy and making that super, super good?
That's why you guys are keep winning. Right.
Yeah.
But Japan, we don't really have any LLMs, big companies right now. So that's a good news, I guess. Application layers era right now, right?
I think so. I mean, I think you could argue that ChatGPT has the ability to maybe apply their research a little bit faster, so they can always have a little bit of a lead on the consumer side. But I think that's true. I think that it is really good news. I think it's good news for the ecosystem as well.
Right.
If there's only one company that has a monopoly on the everything, I don't think that's good long term for anyone. It's not good for consumers. It's not good for the general startup ecosystem, and it's not good for countries where they might not have a foundation model. So I think in some ways it feels like we're in this really good timeline where there's not super intelligence right away and it takes over the world, and like that doesn't seem like that's happening either. But it seems like we're somewhere that's like pretty healthy actually.
Thank you for the great insights, but we're actually running out of the time. So maybe wrap up question. You said that you can't like predict the future right now, but I'd like to ask you like, how would you see the future? Maybe like next 3 or 5 years, AI language learning space is going to be?
Well, I definitely feel more qualified to predict AI language learning than the general future because we think about that a lot. I think like over the next 3 to 5 years, it's fairly clear that if you think about all of the different tasks or capabilities that a really good human tutor has, not all of them, but a lot of them will be able to basically build an equivalent version that will in some ways surpass the best human. And I think that it'll start to feel more and more like you just have this relationship with this really fun, compelling tutor and a set of people that you can just talk with. And it'll feel very immersive. And I don't think that means human tutors are going away, but it just means more people will have accessible, like that level of quality of interaction accessible and actually more accessible. And yeah, I think that that's almost certainly going to be the case in 5 years. Andrew, anything to add?
I mean, if we do our job, it'll be Speak as the dominant force here.
I'm so excited for that. But some people might ask you that AI is evolving like so fast. Is there any necessity of learning English anyway? What would you say to it?
Absolutely, yes.
Right.
I think we strongly believe that people want to learn English and learn languages to communicate directly and connect with other humans. right? That's the fundamental reason. And it is a totally different experience if you have a translator, even a very fast one, even the fastest theoretically possible one. And so we don't think that the market is going anywhere. In fact, we think the market is going to massively increase in size as we build out Speak, and it becomes clear that achieving fluency is kind of a solvable thing, and that we've built a path to become fluent where if you just use the app every day for a year, then you're going to see actually just really dramatic leaps in your ability to communicate automatically and like speak out loud. I think that'll be really cool.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think and I think that already is kind of the case, but it will become even more clear to everyone around the world that like, if I spend 30 minutes a day with an app like Speak, in a year from now, I'll be able to have easy conversations in that language. And I think when that happens, many more people will try to learn languages, not less.
Right. It's all about human connection.
Yeah, and self-improvement. People also like to improve themselves. Right. And I think that's like never going to go away either.
Especially Japanese and Korean, maybe.
They really like to improve themselves.
Right. And for wrapping up, do you have anything to give some kind of message to Japanese viewers?
Maybe just thank you for using the app if you're a user, and we're always interested in learning more about the users. But a big marketing slogan we have is you have to make mistakes to get it right. And I think that's like a really important message when you're thinking about improving yourself is how do you focus on making it okay to make mistakes in order to learn.
Thank you for letting me make a lot of mistakes here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, this is amazing. I think, we are working our hardest every day to improve the technology, make the product experience better. So please give us feedback and let's learn English.
Let's learn English. Thank you so much. Maybe this is going to be a very good English learning content. Yeah. We're going to be giving the
subtitles.
Subtitles.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. Speak に関してはですね、概要欄に貼っておきますので、皆さんそちらからぜひアプリの方にもアクセスしていただければなと思っております。本当にありがとうございました。
ありがとうございます。
ありがとうございます。